Hi, my name is Perry Cooper and I'm a 3D and motion graphics designer working in the advertising industry and posting animations regularly to Instagram. In this series I'm going to show you how to create this fun looping factory scene from start to finish using Cinema 4D R20, OctaneRender 2020 and After Effects for post. In this video we'll build the conveyor belt, structure and containers sitting on top. We'll then set up the espresso slider to control the conveyor belt elements and the rotation of the rollers. Let's get started. To start building the factory scene, let's start off with a rectangle, and I'm going to put this in XZ and then change the width to we're going to go 3000 by 600. And it seems quite big, but it's because the truck is going to be quite big in comparison. Let's at 300. I also want it kind of to go off stage and to be able to move the camera where we want to. I'm just going to set the positioning for this. So I'm going to set this at 765 by 235 by 885. Okay, and this is just so that it's kind of the right height compared to our truck. So we'll bring in our truck in a little while, but this rectangle is basically the master. So conveyor master. So this rectangle, everything else will kind of be working off of. So everything will be the same shape. So we're going to use a few MoGraph objects here. So first off, let's get a cloner. I'm going to just set it to the center, and we're going to bring in a cube, and this is going to be the top of the conveyor belt. So for this, let's change this to 40 by 20 by 200, and we'll turn on fillet, and we'll probably just leave it at the standard settings. And instead of linear, we're going to change this to object, and our object will be our conveyor master. So you can see it's kind of sitting on there, but it's not necessarily sitting in the right direction. So a couple of things we need to do on conveyor master. We need to change this to uniform. Let's just up this to like 100. And now you see that they're evenly spaced. I probably also want to change the shape actually of these objects. So the cube, we can probably just, actually we'll just rotate it. So we go to transform and let's just change rotation, change that through 90. And then the amount, I'm going to up that to 160. So that's our conveyor belt. Okay. Right. So with that done, we now want to kind of have these rollers that roll underneath the conveyor belt. So let's just call this conveyor top. And we'll duplicate this and we'll call this rollers. Probably don't want the kind of the same amount, but let's just bring in a tube, add that into the rollers, and then we'll just change the settings here. So let's just change the inner radius to 12, the outer to 20, and then the height, I think we'll change that to like 200, and we'll make this like plus Z. You see the positioning is not quite right. I don't want to do multiple splines, so we can just change it in the transform. So in the transform we can change the Y just so that's sitting underneath conveyor, and I will turn on the fillet, and then I'll probably change the number. We'll go with half. We'll change that down to 80, so half the number of rollers, and then I want to kind of add into these rollers kind of something that we can turn around to show that they're actually moving. So let's add in a cube, put that in the roller, change this to like 8 by 30, leave that 200. The fillet will turn that on. So now when down the line, when we actually add on some rotation, we want to actually see these rollers turning. Right, so now I want to connect the roll, add in a kind of a base to this, and then connecting, have a connection between the two. So we will create a rectangle, and this is going to kind of join the rollers to these. So I'm going to duplicate that rollers again. I'm going to call this rollers connect, and we're going to add this rectangle in. I'm going to change this to another, there we go, to ZY, so it's in the right rotation, and maybe change this to 200 by 200, and we'll add on some rounding and we'll probably make that 10. And then I want to change the positioning of this, so I'm going to delete the tube because we don't need that again. I will add in a circle because I want to sweep this, so let's stick our sweep in, PSR that, and add that in, add in our circle, and our circle we just need to make quite small, so let's make that 8. And then we can change our transform again, change the Y. We can just change this positioning just so that that sits in the middle of our roller. That seems about right. And then this is going to connect to a wall underneath, so we want to kind of make sure that fits. Actually, maybe we need to make this a bit wider. Let's change this to, let's change it to 220, like that. That's kind of sticking out. And then let's just adjust. Cool. Okay. And then I want to kind of have a connection at the bottom of each of these. So I'm going to grab a cylinder, bring that in. What we need to do is probably group these two objects together. I'm going to turn off clone just so we can look at it over here. And then change this to +Z. Just make sure that's in the right position. No, kind of upside down for some reason. So we'll just put this at the top, easily fixed. Change this to like 20. And we'll add on fillet caps. Maybe we'll make that like 10. Add that on. So what we're going to now do is kind of put a wall in underneath that will, this will be like breaking into. Let's just make this height like 210. So it's just kind of connecting in there. Right. So that's kind of quite a bit of the structure done. So let's now, we will need to duplicate this, and this is going to be the wall. And we're going to need to add in another rectangle, and this one we'll just make 200 a 200, and we'll add maybe a rounding of like 20, and we'll sweep this. We can quite quickly build this out. And what I might do is just PSR this correctly. Oh, there you go, to there. Let's try and at least try and keep it neat. Okay, and then I'm going to bring this down, and I want that to sit between the roller, the top, and maybe we'll make this a bit deeper. So get the wall. We'll change the height to maybe like 220. Then we'll move everything down, maybe to there. That cylinder I can just bring out a touch. Maybe we'll actually make these stick out a bit more. So maybe we'll make this like 230, like that. Cool. And I'll probably want to bring that up. It's kind of sitting underneath. Okay, so that's cool. And I should probably bring in a floor just so we can kind of see. Actually, I'm just going to change this slightly. This connect part, I'm just going to make this 100 rather than 200. And bring this up. Then that cylinder I can move into position like that. Okay, yeah, okay, that seems better. And then I'm going to call this like wall main. And I'm going to duplicate that and call that wall base. And this one, this rectangle, I'm going to change slightly. I'm going to change this to 220 and just 50 high. And this is going to be just like a rim around the edge, around the base of the wall. So that is that. So that's our main conveyor belt build. So let's create the things that sit on top that we're going to kind of pour stuff into, and there's going to be moving around, and then we'll try and wire it all up so it'll make it easier for us to animate down the line. Right, so for the container, let's just bring in a cube. Let's zoom in. going on. I'm just going to change the size of this to 450 by 135, and we're going to leave that at 200. I'm going to make this editable, and then go to the polygon mode, and then I'm going to get this kind of loop cut, and then I don't know, not just under halfway down, I'm going to make a cut. Then I'm going to select, like we did on the back of the truck, select these two edges. Then I'm going to scale these in by, let's get to about like 75%. That's good. And then on the inside, I think what I'll do is select the top. We'll do an extrude inner. And then I'm going to do an extrude down. I'll do this twice. Second one, I'm just going to scale that in. Kind of roughly getting the same shape on the inside as we've got on the outside. That's our object. So with that, I think I'm going to add on these kind of like handles on the edge. So to do that, let's get a rectangle, and I'm going to give it some rounding, maybe like 100. To make that editable, let's bring it up into view. Go to point mode, and what I want to do is actually, with the rectangle selected, I'm going to uncheck close spline, and I'm going to delete a couple of these points because I basically want just a handle shape. So I'm going to grab these two, bring them in. Here we've got that handle, and then we can run a circle along a sweep and create our little handles. So let's do that. Bring this down. Looks kind of correct. What I'll do is just make sure my sweep is PSR'd to the rectangle, and then everything will be centered correctly. Yeah. Okay, so what I'll do is just rotate this to position. I'll do 180 and 90. I want to scale that down. I want these to be a bunch of these along here, so I'm going to get a MoGraph cloner, add that in. Oh, and actually the cloner's probably, yeah, it's going to change the position and everything. So let's just have a look at what that's done. So we could probably transform it in here, the rotation. No, that's it. So I want to rotate that by 90. We can rotate everything there by 180. And then we want to kind of attach this to our box, and we're going to make this a volume builder so that everything sticks together nicely. Maybe 30. Yep. Let's kind of attach those on. And then I want to do the same on the other side. So I'll probably just get a symmetry. Add that on. There we go, got our handles on either side. So with that, let's get a volume builder and mesher. I have got shortcuts here. I should probably add those on. So let's just add the symmetry and the cube in. Under volume builder, I'm going to take this down to 2. Add on some smoothing, maybe just 1. And I might actually up that circle. Let's try like 12. No. Maybe space these out a tiny bit more. And these obviously aren't actual handles because they're huge. And then what I want to do is kind of have it so that part of it is maybe glass. So I'll just turn this off, get my cube, and what I might actually do is get my loop selection, and I'm just going to select these inner parts because I just want to kind of make it a little bit thicker. I'm just going to bring this scale of these in. Yeah, okay. And see, I like how, you know, it smoothly connects these quite easily and quickly. We can get quite an effective result. I'm going to grab a cube, not null, cube, and let's send this out. Maybe, so this will be like to separate what's glass and what's solid, or what's multiple colors. Add this in, I'll call this cutout. Under the volume builder, we'll add that in. We'll say subtract to see what that looks like. I might bring that up a tiny amount. They've kind of got an even edge on the outside. And you can call that container main, not man, main. And then we'll duplicate that. And we'll call this container glass. And on this version, we're just going to set the same cutout, but rather than subtract, we're going to say intersect. So I'm going to make that glass or a different material. I mean, you could actually, you know, do these separately and make that little door that flips open. For this one, I'm going to make it glass. So that's our container. I'm going to group all that together. Actually, I want to, before I do that, what I've just noticed is these are not centered. I want to make sure that all of our objects are in the right set, have got the right centering to them. So let's just throw all this back in. And even though your order might be correct here, you need to make sure your order is correct in here, so it's all out of whack. So that's good. Add that in. We want to subtract that. And that's centered correctly. And then rather than duplicate that, we'll just call this one main. And we'll call this one glass. Then again, we'll just go in and we'll say intersect. And that is correct. We actually do want the center probably to be, oh no, we can offset it in the MoGraph. So let's save that. And I'm going to save this one. I've got this archive. I'm going to call this conveyor like we did with the truck. I'm going to call this conveyor unbroken. I'm just going to go back. Save it as conveyor. Yes. And then I'm just going to have a look at our garage shading with lines again, because you want to take these down. Probably try the 0.5. Yeah, see, that's really reduce that. We'll make those editable, and then we'll group those objects, and we'll call this container. I'll bring this conveyor master to the top because we're using this a lot, and let's bring in another MoGraph cloner. Just going to center that up again. It's not definitely required. I'm going to add that into the cloner. Let's go back to garage shading, and we want to go to object mode, and our object is going to be our conveyor master again. Everything's set in there. So let's transform these. So we want to kind of flip them and rotate them. So let's change. No, that's definitely not right. Maybe that's 90. Yeah, maybe 180. And then we want to change the position in the Y. We want to make sure that these sit just there. So they're sitting on our conveyor belt, and I'm just going to change the number. I'm going to have 8 in total. So, so what we're going to do is set this up so we can control all of these objects, the animation of all these in one go. Right, to set up this controller, let's just first create a null object, and we'll call this conveyor controller. We're going to do a little bit of espresso, but this is very simple, and is quite handy. So let's add on a espresso. Now, we want to do a few things. So the first thing we want to do is, with this object, we want to create some user data that we can use to push the conveyor belt around and animate. So we're going to create that in the null, actually. We're not even going to do that in the espresso yet. So in the null, let's go user data, add user data. And in here, we've got our name here, data. So we'll just call this one position. And then the type, so you've got all these different types. We're just going to go with float. So it's just a number basically. And the float type we want is a float slider. So we want to be able to slide something up and down. That's all we need to do. Press OK. Right, so that's created this slider, which is going to be our controller that we're going to use to control our animation. So we'll just set this up now, we'll animate later. So with that, what we can do is let's drag that in. Oh, actually, let's drag our null into here, our conveyor controller. And then we can add on here our user data position. So that is kind of going to drive everything. So what do we want to drive? Well, there's two items we want to drive the position of, which is the conveyor top and here they are, the containers, which we should probably name containers. Bring those in. So each of these, what we want to do is actually on the inputs for both of those, I want to go to object properties, and we want to change the offset, and then object properties offset. So basically both of these container and the conveyor top, they are running along this conveyor master spline, and you see we've got this offset here. So we're going to control that globally just through this. So if we just pipe the position into both those offsets, because the offset goes to 0 to 100 and our position goes to 0 to 100. So now we can actually get our conveyor controller and see we can just move this up and down, and that will control our conveyor belt and move them all around, so we can use that to animate. But the other thing I want to animate is also the rollers underneath. I want them to rotate as we move this up and down. So we're going to need to add in a couple more things to do that. So first off, we need the rollers themselves. So let's bring the rollers in. And what we want to control is under transform. We want to control rotation, and I think it's B. Let's have a look on our rollers. Transform, I think it's this one. Yeah, that's going to be the one that we're going to control. Now, what we need to do is create a range mapper to convert our position to degrees. So let's bring that in, and our position we can pipe into that range mapper. And then if we look here, our input, we want percent, and then our output is degrees. So that's all we need to do there. Now if we pipe this into the rollers, we should get some rotation. They're rotating, but they're rotating slow, and they're in comparison to the top, and they're also rotating in the wrong direction. So we can do something to fix that. So what we can do is actually, we look for math, get this math add, and let's drop this in, and we can actually make that range mapper go into there as an input, and then our output, we're going to go to the rollers. So what we actually want to do is want to multiply. So if we multiply and then choose by an amount to multiply it, so let's say 10, so it's going to make it 10 times faster. Then if we move this, see now they're rotating more appropriate speed, but they're still not going in the right direction. So we can just go to our input and say -10, go back to our controller, and now as we move it, you see they're moving correctly. And when we keyframe this, everything will slow down together and speed up together. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. In the next video, we'll build out the rest of the 3D elements in the scene. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and stay tuned for new videos.